This is the Darbin Orvar podcast, a companion to my YouTube channel about making and building. Here we talk about things surrounding those subjects, as well as thoughts about culture, society, science, and anything in between. Thank you for listening.
Okay, this is podcast number 4.
Has it been 4 already? The
And,
Darbin Orvar podcast.
This one's about creativity. I guess everything about it. Maybe not so much. We'll try to.
That will be the
formal.
general topic, and then we'll go from there.
It won't be an essay. It'll be a free-flowing discussion.
Free-flowing discussion. My name is Linn, and you're.
I'm Matt.
And we are the Darbin Orvar podcast.
We are the Borg.
we are the Borg. Yes. Well, creativity.
So, do you have some ideas on this, or is this just come to you as you go?
I would say I have some ideas on this. Yes.
Okay. Let's
Let's
see
just
what
push
you got.
the on button, huh?
Exactly. Go.
Go.
See what you got.
Well,
I'll evaluate it and see if it's any good for everybody else out there.
You'll see if it has any merit, if it's any good.
Exactly. Well, we're going to do that all together.
Oh, really? So it's more one of those things. Well, it's kind of funny about creativity because it's one of these things where everybody wants to be creative.
Mm-hmm.
You know, there is such a strong push for it, where it's almost like in so many different jobs and in areas where people want to find that way to be creative.
Why do you think they want to be so creative?
Why? I don't know why. I mean, because it makes
the world go round? What?
Well, because that's what pushes new things. It's what's pushing, innovation.
So the want of new things.
The want of new things, and
I guess everybody does want innovation, and that's you have to be creative to get innovation.
Yeah, and innovation in all kinds of areas. It's almost like creativity in that sense is so important because from any area, if you want to start your own business or something from a creative point of view, then you need a good product.
Mm-hmm.
You have to be creative to come up with that. You know, if you want a good job, you have to be creative. Not all jobs,
I guess a lot of the good jobs are relatively creative oriented.
Yeah. Yeah. If you talk about non-traditional jobs in a sense,
Like
it's
what?
almost like if you think of traditional jobs, you think of the lawyers, the doctors, the accountants, all of them. I guess you have to be creative in some ways.
Not really.
There. Well, you never know. You have to kind of, if there's something wrong, you have to maybe find things.
You have to be competent. I don't know about creative. You don't really want them to be too creative.
Yeah, you want them to be do their job.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You want them to be competent at their job. Creativity can be dangerous, I guess, for some of those kinds of people.
To come up with too creative financial solutions.
Exactly.
That could be a problem.
Yeah. No one really likes that too much.
Yeah. But I guess it's when you think about the newer professions, and that's what I can't even call it a profession. Because,
what do you mean?
Well, like we've been talking, like YouTube, for example.
Yeah, I don't think that's a profession.
It's not a profession. It's
no, I
more
guess
of
anything with a profession is you went to school for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's why doctors and lawyers are professionals.
Yes.
YouTube people are definitely not.
Doctors and lawyers and business executives.
Some business people.
Yeah, I guess when you think about creativity, you think about music. You think about, in terms of coming up with being creative. You think about.
You mean everybody would acknowledge that is creative?
Yeah, art.
To be musical.
If you're an artist, if you are a musician, especially if you're a writer.
Yeah.
Those are all.
There's a lot of famous examples of those people. That kind of idea.
Yeah, because that's what automatically comes to mind when you think about being creative, right? Although people are creative in all kinds of ways.
Well, I guess if in terms of woodworking, I don't really think anybody looks at a lot of the woodworking people
as creative.
Yeah, I mean,
I guess it depends on what you mean by that. Do you mean a creative design for some piece of furniture? A creative jig that does something?
No, I don't mean it that way. I'm talking more along the lines of, the examples that many people were raised on, the Roy and Norm concepts. I don't think anybody really looks at those guys as creative.
It's almost like when you look at them and what they do, it's almost like it's so traditional that there is
one's traditional.
Well, I just mean that
The projects they make, you mean?
The projects they make are traditional in the sense that it feels very plan-oriented. It doesn't feel like they come up with their own design.
Okay, so the artist that's more free-flowing is what you mean by that's associated with creativity.
Yeah.
The kind of inspiration and
Or maybe they take an old concept and turn it into something new.
Well, it's a good point. You never think about the woodworker sitting in their shop all night making some great creation, whereas you might of a poet or a writer.
You think about the tortured artist in that sense, who is pushing to get their grand idea, to have something click in their mind.
Could just be bad marketing.
It could be.
I mean, it's hard to tell.
Marketing is pretty much
anything
and everything.
Well, when I was doing programming a lot, you definitely would be there all night.
Yeah, it's a different mentality.
Yeah, I know, but it's like you're trying to create something.
Yeah.
Usually for business,
right?
But you definitely wouldn't think about a woodworker as sitting in the shop all night trying to make something as like an artist in the same way.
You think of that more as a job, as something that you're doing, because there's like a very specific
how
goal
often do you sitting in the shop all night creating?
I guess not like that. I mean, maybe tinkering with some things and kind of coming up with ideas, and like sketching out ideas on paper and kind of Like I love this challenge where you're like, oh, that was like the end table that I built like a couple of videos back, where it was like, I have a quarter sheet of plywood.
Yeah.
What kind of piece of furniture can I create with this?
So why isn't that associated with like great creativity, like an artist? Even though, I mean, I don't know any artists, modern artists.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think many people do.
Yeah.
They're not very well known. I mean, we're not talking about Van Gogh here or something like that.
Yeah, I bet there's like many more smaller, well-known artists in specific groups, especially with the web now and stuff, like larger Instagram accounts that are very isolated, that are big.
But when you think about the tortured soul, you don't think about Instagram people.
Oh no, you don't think about the modern world at all when you think about the tortured soul. I love the concept of the tortured soul.
But are they creative?
But by definition, I mean, of course, being creative in many ways.
Well, they're creative 100 years later when they're dead and their stuff is worth a lot of money.
And they died poor when nothing to show for it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So their work is judged later after they're dead. Now work is judged pretty immediately.
Right. I don't know. Okay, you can talk about creativity from the tortured soul, from the artist, and those are like extreme examples of creativity.
Those are the ones that are in popular culture.
Yeah, those are when you think about how I want to be creative like.
Yeah.
You have these like Bob Dylan, and I guess with that concept comes the idea of like full focus, full immersion. It's like the idea of going out to a cabin in the woods and write your masterpiece. It's not a balanced kind of life. It's an all or nothing pursuit.
I guess when people are looking at creativity in the real way, they're not looking at this extreme kind of stuff.
That's what I was getting at.
So
that's not like a realistic concept.
I don't think anybody wants to be Van Gogh.
Nobody wants to be that tortured.
No. Nobody wants to commit suicide or anything like that to be considered creative. They just want to get ahead at their job.
People want to be creative, and oftentimes I think people get kind of stopped because they think that whatever they're doing might not be like as excellent as what they had in their mind or what they want to create, I think about this a lot, like with painting. Like I love painting, and I love like going out and doing it almost like just in a relaxing sense. But then sometimes you get like, is this good? Is it worth the time to do this? What is really going to come out of this?
That's a funny thing, because it basically, if no one else really sees what you're doing, can it even be creative?
Yeah.
I mean, other people have to basically judge it in some way.
But
like, if you have a very popular video and it's about, how to build a chair or whatever, and a lot of people like it, well, that's probably creative. That's creative because it got a lot of views.
It is like that. It really is like it's judged by other people. And if it's just sitting in your drawer, then how do you even know if it is creative? Like you have an inherent sense if it's creative or not. But it's only
your opinion.
I know it's only your opinion, so that's not really true. I agree. That is really like it's really based on what other people, how they react to that one thing. Mm-hmm. If it's I guess because anything can be creative. Anything stupid can be creative. It doesn't mean it's any good.
Well, because basically what it means is relatively unique.
Exactly.
But it's
special,
but it's not judged by others.
Yeah.
Then it really may not be creative at all.
Yeah.
It may not be any good anyway.
When you say to like, if somebody did something, you're like, that was really creative. I mean, that kind of means that, that was really clever.
It also means,
really
do you want to make it yourself?
I got something out of that, and I want to do something. It was a different take on whatever you did.
I guess if you want to either make it or add to it, then it was probably creative.
Right.
Or if it's competent, I suppose. I mean, I guess that's limiting the concept of creativity if you just say it's competent, but,
Yeah. Creativity is such a weird thing in that sense because it's so subjective.
So what projects do you think you've done that are basically like, say, that was pretty creative?
Well, I think the crosscut sled with the box joint jig was creative.
Can you think of other things you've seen
useful.
Other things you've seen that you would call creative too?
You mean like from other people?
Could be from other people. Could be something from a magazine or whatever.
Well, okay. Well, I recently built a thing for the planer to turn it into a jointer.
Yeah.
And that's because I saw that Christiana from Get Hands Dirty did something like that with her planer, and she was talking about how she found that in some magazines or Lumberjacks or something like that.
Yeah, I think it was Lumberjacks.
Yeah, and it's kind of an excellent example of the pathway. Like how she was looking for that, and I hadn't even thought of that, but I had this new planer. So I thought when I saw that, because you can do so much more when you have a jointer, and it's like one of those things that I've really been like thinking would be really cool, but there's really no space for it, and there's don't really want to spend the money.
It's actually a pretty critical tool.
Yes, and now it's been awesome.
Yeah,
been using it so much. And that was, I thought that was really clever. Wow, that's a great idea.
I don't know how she found it exactly. I guess she went looking for it. So basically, I wonder if did she have the idea first?
Saw it from did
she did she have the idea and wanted to find a plan?
Yeah.
Or did she come across it? And it's hard to tell what the origin was, but I remember, because we didn't even have the idea of it. It was like cool to hear that she had the idea to look for it or something.
Right. So when things like that, where you're like, it's something that you're like, oh, that would be really useful. I hadn't thought of that. I can use what I have, and that would be really useful. That is like creative.
That was a pretty cool realization that tools really help you to be more creative too. It opens up the door to so many more kinds of wood to use when you can joint yourself.
Yeah.
Especially if you don't have to use a hand plane.
Right. And it's amazing, like it's even like before you have a table saw. When you are limited to just the wood that's cut up at pre-sized at the lumber store, you are so much more limited.
And so you're kind of like less creative.
You're less creative in that sense because you're like, oh, you know what? Oh no, I can't make a box with those dimensions, with that thickness, because that would be too expensive to buy, or I just don't have that available.
So you're making a great case where you need a shop full of tools.
Right.
I mean, I guess it's true. You do.
Yeah. In order for you to not get stopped in your track, where you're like constantly, although. Then you might find some other creative way to go around that.
I'll counter your back on that one, because if that was true, somebody would have a better idea by now.
Yeah.
I think enough time's gone by where people didn't have table saws that the only thing they really came up with is, different kinds of bow saws.
Yeah.
Annoying hand tools basically, or expensive, or difficult to store.
And unless you're in the woodworking just for the relaxing experience where you don't really have anything.
Is it that relaxing to resaw with a bow saw or some whatever those things are called when you resaw, a 5-foot piece? That's a lot of work.
And okay, maybe it could be like fun for one time, but when you actually want to get something done and you actually want to get something built.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the most.
Well, I agree. I'd
rather
use a bandsaw or whatever.
The appeal, but at the same time, sometimes you just want to get something done.
Well, that goes to the point that a lot of people who do hand tools exclusively, they're mostly building traditional things.
Yeah, right.
For the most part.
Yeah. Have you ever seen a traditional hand tool woodworker work on exclusively modern things, or like make new designs? It's almost all.
They're not really coming up with the new designs.
No, it's like okay.
There might be somebody out there. I don't want to.
Yeah, there might be. That would be cool if you are one of those people. That'd be cool to
know about your channel.
That. Yeah.
So I guess you can kind of see that creativity has a lot to do with how fast you can get something done, so you can move on. Mm-hmm. To creativity, like we said before, it's kind of like the end result.
Yeah.
It's not the process.
Yes. At the same time, though, but I agree with that. But I'm also thinking about how, in some ways, creativity is the process. I think a lot of people are like, I'm just not creative. I'm not one of those people who are creative, and
maybe they're not though.
Well, I think maybe you can be more or less creative. But I think that creativity in many ways is about like doing stuff a lot.
Well,
you
yeah,
know?
people who say they're not creative probably don't do stuff a lot.
Right. But it's almost like, I just think that you can't, there's no such thing as running out of ideas, of not, because almost like the more you do, the more creative you become. Because the more you understand, the more new doors open up.
I guess so if you want to be more creative, go buy a new tool.
Yes, but in that sense, I would say that the creativity is in the process. It's almost like if you paint something and you're like, is this great right now?
Oh, I agree with you. I agree with you about that.
It will maybe become.
But no one else sees the process. They just see the end result.
But then sometimes, though, isn't just the idea of being creative yourself, which maybe lead to something in the future, which makes you better?
Yeah, that's all. That's all individual, though. That's not dealing with how the world will judge your creativity.
Yeah.
No one's going to say, "Oh, you did a great creative process," but we don't see a result. All people really can see is the result.
Yeah, I guess so. Yeah. I just mean that the creative process is very important in that sense.
It's almost like when you think about, let's go back to historic painters and things like that. A lot of these guys, the reason they're creative in many ways, actually, because they are using tools. They're many of them created their own paints.
A lot of them created their own.
They created canvases. They created all sorts of things like this. Yeah,
did a lot of experimentation with that.
And so we don't really see that part of history, and obviously, where they passed down how they did the painting or the paints.
Yeah,
you don't get to see that. All you get to see is their paintings.
Yeah.
You don't get to see any of the other stuff. We don't know that, unless you study them specifically, you don't know which one did what in terms of the process of learning how to make paints better, or, what colors they would use more, or how they would develop the colors, or what techniques they might have used. All you see is the end result of the painting. So in terms of judging creativity, you only judge that result.
Yeah.
We don't judge how well they made their paint.
Right, and we don't know how many failed paintings they did throughout their process either.
Again, it's a really subjective area with paintings, of course, and history kind of is a judge of that in a way that we are not individual judges of that.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how valuable that is for the modern person.
Yeah.
Basically, people want to have more ideas. They want to be happier, healthier. These concepts.
Yeah.
They want to have a more fulfilled life. They want more ideas.
Yeah.
They want to do better at work.
Yeah.
So from that point of view, some of the things that I think make successful students or successful learners or employees or whatever that's where we were talking about the interleaving concept.
Ooh, that's one of my favorite subjects, yes.
And basically what it means is that you are kind of using ways of learning to make your mind get something more.
It's a technique.
Yeah, get something better. You want to give an example of how you use it? I can tell you how I use it.
Well, I mean, it can be something like you are working on a problem. And like you were working on a design and thinking about how do I really need to make this fit. It's a struggle. You have a problem, and then instead of trying to push through it, where you're just continuing to push through it, then you just break off and do something completely different, where you put your mind in a different thing.
I guess if you're relating this to how you learn better or how you want to learn faster, I think that the way you learn better is to learn a lot of different things at the same time.
Yeah.
A lot of people, if they're reading a book, like a novel, they tend to read just the one novel.
Yeah, and push through and then go to the next one, yeah.
Well, whether they push through or not, they just pretty much do one at a time.
Yeah.
And so I've always the biggest thing I've always found with a novel is that basically once you read it, it's done. It doesn't really lead anywhere else. It doesn't help you continue your journey of learning.
Right.
And so nonfiction, of course, now pretty much whatever nonfiction you mean is going to lead somewhere else. It doesn't matter what subject it's in. It's usually referencing other people, other situations that you may not have known about. So you can kind of use it as a pathway. It's a totally different look than reading Shakespeare or reading 50 Shades of Grey, which are basically dead ends.
Right.
They don't go anywhere else.
Yeah.
And so when you do reading a novel, reading a nonfiction work, you can read a lot of different ones at the same time. Yeah,
because it's almost like the storyline doesn't interfere with one another, so you don't get confused in that sense. Right.
Or it's like if, when I was studying science, you you would read a lot of different science at the same time.
Yeah.
You could read ton outside of school or whatever, but you could read a ton of it. And the more you read, the more you realize the other subjects,
how they connect or how they are.
Yeah. I get the kind of the most famous book I can think of that actually tried to kind of go into this point a little bit was E.O. Wilson's book called Consilience. And that was a little bit more about the unified theory concept or how each subject is connected, but it was basically realizing that other subjects, the interdisciplinary concept, is really valuable and not being done very much in subjects. And I guess that's what's been actually pretty interesting about woodworking is it's getting people to do other things. Arduinos and metal and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah,
and all
there's
this
a
kind
lot
of stuff.
more things that go into it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
There's each
and it's almost like it presents opportunities to like, okay, if I need to, when I do this coffee table, then a good excuse to get into welding or something to create a base, or but I was thinking about this whole interleaving that people even use that as ways of learning where it's a technique. Like I even read somebody who was learning how to play golf. And instead of just practicing the same swing over and over again, you practice like 3 or 4 swings in a row.
Yes.
So I want to hit that ball, 100 feet, or aim for that.
Yes.
And then the next one, 20 feet. And
so you're saying the limited thinker uses the driver the whole time.
Right. You just go. You do a whole bucket. You try to do
with one club.
With one club, and you just try to perfect that one.
I've known people like that. Yeah.
But I've also, people. I read something where they also did that with math education, where instead of doing the same type of problems, one section they just did the same type of problem, then they kind of switched the problems up. So you did one and then do a different kind and then do a different kind, and how that just kind of shifts your brain around, and it makes you remember things better. It makes you learn things better.
Yeah, I totally agree. It's an excellent way to look at things.
Yeah.
You basically, taking things from different points of view. You jump from, woodworking to Arduino to to some other kind of woodworking.
Exactly. It strengthens everything in your brain more because
the memories. I think it's because you're making memories so much.
It's different associations.
Yeah, you're creating those differences a lot.
Yeah. And
that's most likely what it is.
Yeah.
Because when you vary things, we were talking about this the other day about what things you remember in the past. And it's almost like it's amazing how much you don't remember things. Yeah. You forget almost everything.
Right.
But there's certain things you do remember, and there's usually some stressful situations surrounding it.
Right.
Whereas the normal everyday nonsense, you just don't remember.
Yeah, exactly. We were like, do you remember brushing your teeth? No. How many times have you brushed your teeth? And you don't really remember any of them.
So much of your life is forgotten.
Right.
So the better you can make yourself remember those things, or the things you really want to remember, like, maybe how to swing a golf club better.
Right.
Those things, if you burn them in your mind through a different mechanism, that's why they maybe last better.
Yeah.
So if you're same thing with woodworking, if you're doing it like just robotic manner, then you're not going to maybe remember that you would. The practice gets more practiced when you actually turn it around a little bit.
I mean, for example, exactly. So if you want to learn things better, then just don't try to do dovetails nonstop.
Yeah.
Do a couple dovetails, then go on the lathe.
Yeah, do something different.
Then use some pocket screws.
Yeah.
I mean, mix it up. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So mixing it up is really quite important. And pretty much everything. I can't think of anything that wouldn't be useful to do.
Right.
I mean, I found it most useful with the books and things. You remember things better when you do mix it up, especially if the subjects are, kind of related. They're in the same world and you're learning a different aspect of it.
Yeah.
But that can be true too. If you have a trouble in like a woodworking problem or a design issue, if you go sit there and look at a woodworking magazine for 20 minutes, your brain is looking in a very different way.
Yeah.
So maybe that is a perfect example of how it's associated, obviously, because it's about a woodworking magazine.
Right.
But it's not directly the problem you were having problems with.
Yeah. It also makes me remember, like Marie Curie. She was always, she always started her day with doing some math problems, algebra, or whenever she had a problem, she went back to that and just kind of shifted her brain. And that's a great example too.
We've done card tricks.
Yeah. Oh yeah, card tricks are great.
Yeah.
Yes.
I remember one time. I can't remember the situation. I can't remember that one time. We basically said, "Screw it, let's go get a beer."
I was doing something and I was so frustrated with it. I can't remember what it was, but I couldn't figure something out, and I was so annoyed.
So we said, "Screw it." We went to the restaurant. Let's go get a beer.
Go play card tricks.
And we're gonna just completely shift your mind and learn how to do a card trick.
Yeah, and it was a very interesting card trick too.
Yeah. So, but it made you actually completely forget the other issue.
It's like and then it almost rests your mind. Then I believe that it's everything is almost like processing in the background, and you just when you're not realizing, you can't figure something out, and then you just need to tell your brain, okay, just keep working on this in the background, and then I'm gonna go and think about something completely different. Yeah, and hopefully you'll have figured it out.
More people should go learn card tricks and have beers when they get frustrated or something. That's why it's amazing how at work these days people don't drink for lunch.
Well,
it's crazy. Yeah, but everybody is more robotic in that sense when you can't break off.
Yeah, people are so hyper.
Oh God, you know what sounds like the worst thing in the world is the idea of you eat at work, like a cafeteria. Like the idea that everybody seems to think it's like great to eat cafeteria food at Google. I mean, I don't care how good the food is, man. You're stuck in that same world. That seems insane.
Yeah.
There seems to be nothing really.
Some people don't mind.
I don't think that you can say they don't mind, because what you really want is creativity. But if you don't shift your mind, you're going to get burned out.
Right.
So maybe a lot of people get burned out really fast eating at the, Apple or Google or whatever.
Because they never have a shift, never have a mental break.
So if you go out and have a 3-martini lunch, maybe you actually would, come up with something. It's like you need to get away from.
Well, I guess it depends on what kind of job you have. I mean,
I would say
if you're talking about a creative job.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
Well, yeah, if you're trying to get through some programming issue,
you're not going into to perform surgery after that.
No,
it's like
but that's a different kind of that's a
different kind of job.
Yeah, no, obviously no, not there.
Yeah.
But I guess what I'm saying is that if you go off and take a break, even if you take the rest of the day off, go have your 3 martinis or whatever, then you are at least not sticking yourself back in the bad environment and you're getting all frustrated again.
Right.
You need to break off from it.
Yeah, I agree. Oftentimes just completely stopping whatever it is you're having an issue with is much better. Or, one of my favorite is cleaning. If you are frustrated,
go wash the dishes if you get annoyed.
Well, maybe not wash the dishes. Well, I guess you could. But organizing, go over things, clean, even just simple tasks like vacuum, because then you feel like you are doing something.
Control.
Like exactly, you're taking back control.
Exactly.
Like you did not have control over the problem you tried to solve, so you create a little bit of control.
Yes, that's a good example. That's why the shop, you're kind of constantly organizing it. You're kind of whatever it is, just even making it neat.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Knolling.
Well, yeah, exactly.
Creating things in neat piles.
Who was that? What's his name? Tom Sachs.
Tom Sachs.
That's right.
Yes. Always being knolling.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I think, I think what he didn't say related to that was that it constantly calms your mind.
Yeah.
To do that.
Right.
And it basically...
exactly. I like the whole control thing. I think that's a good point because, it's like we as humans, we crave control. We want controls over our environments. That's why, haven't they done tests where the doctor usually is much less stressed out than the nurse? Yeah, because the doctor is the one in control and the nurse does not have as much control.
Even though the doctor has more responsibility. But they have more control too.
Exactly.
That's the problem with having a job though where you're not the boss, is that you got somebody on top of you. And even if that person is not a bad boss, you basically you can't go off and say, I'm done for the day. Yeah. I have not figuring out what I want to figure out and I'm out of here.
And I don't think I'm going to be able to figure it out like this.
Exactly. Well, that's a good point. Yeah, exactly. Maybe some places you can actually say that. But I think I'm not going to be able to figure this out today. Yeah. And I'm not even going to try anymore.
Right, because
I'm out of here.
If you bang your head against it too many times, it creates such a negative, bad environment.
You're just going to annoy the rest of the employees around.
And you might not figure it out at all, or it might not turn out as good because it's so forced.
Well, then it gets into management issues if good bosses realize this or whatever. But no one's going to say, go have 3 martinis.
No.
That's way out of line.
Right. Okay. So let's say that it's interesting. Let's say you're frustrated and and some people are just going to say, you know what? I'm just going to go and watch a movie. I'm just going to go and read my novel or whatever.
Yeah.
And
I don't think that's a good idea.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know, from my experience, I think that if you're having a problem like that, you need to not kind of fall into the Netflix coma.
Right. Netflix coma.
Because,
where you watch 5 episodes in a row and the whole day is gone.
I just don't think that you can say that, nonfiction or fictional television is a good thing. It does. I don't think it has anything like helpful to do with creativity.
I think that one of the reasons why it may be so is that you are shutting your brain off completely.
Yeah. It's got a weird, vibe going on with
it's like it's like I'm giving up control.
Yeah, exactly. Maybe that's what it is. It's giving up control.
I'm not doing anything more.
That's where the card trick is like learning.
Relaxing. You may think that this is what I need. But on the other hand,
it's
maybe what you really need is to go and play the instrument that you have been meaning to do.
Oh yeah, that's a good one. Yeah.
Especially learning a new piece. I mean, I always think it's kind of funny, like playing the piano or something like that. I always thought that like when you do chords, that is like your brain is kind of shut off because it's all like you kind of know where the places are for the chords.
You mean like playing Billy Joel or something like that?
Yeah. You have something you sing along to, and it's kind of fun, but you're not really thinking. You're not figuring things out.
It's more like watching Netflix.
Yeah. But when you are like starting a new classical piece or something and there's so much going on and you're just you're sitting there and you're like,
focusing a lot.
You're so focused on it, and it's like it's a relaxing focused.
Yeah.
Because you're so intense on it.
That's just like the card trick thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, or learning, like, I guess you go do some algebra problem.
Right.
Even if you knew it in the past, you probably have to struggle through it a little bit.
Right.
But it's going to make you think, and it's going to make you forget everything else.
Yeah.
And so that is good.
Yeah.
I think we talked about this too, like, okay, even though I don't think fiction is a great escape to continue thinking good, but maybe like non-traditional fiction is, like Dostoevsky or something that's basically not in your world, not familiar to you.
Okay, so it's almost like a cold shower. You need to immerse yourself in a different environment completely, mentally. Yeah. And
when you read, like, those people are very different in that book than 50 Shades of Grey people or Hunger Games people or something like that.
Yeah.
Because the people in Dostoevsky's books are like so weird compared to people today.
Yeah.
What we consider normal is very different than that.
Yeah.
So it will shake you out a little bit. Yeah, it is like a cold shower. Then you can basically, I think what it has to do with is that you're forgetting everything else.
Yeah.
Because you become so immersed.
Yeah.
But you're not forgetting like you watch Lost on Netflix, which basically kind of, you shut your brain down.
Yeah.
You're letting them tell you what to think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess that is the dangerous part.
So that is a good tip in general to stay creative, is learn new things.
Yeah. Right.
And I guess how intensively you learn new things, how you want to, get your brain going in new areas, is how well you're going to pursue it.
Right.
But you still need to have that playtime. Like if you go out as an adult and buy a bunch of Lego, thinking that that's gonna like make you creative.
That's forced to me.
Exactly, it's forced.
Yeah.
Yeah, but if you go out and learn something where, you want to learn how to work in Arduino, and you're not really sure what you want to do with it, but you really do want to, it just seems cool to play with.
Yeah.
And you really want to learn how the circuits work, or kind of a little bit, but you're not so sure.
You go back to basics.
Yeah, you end up going back to basics with learning, what a resistor is and a transistor or whatever. And those things...
Basic circuitry.
Exactly. And it forces you to do that.
Yeah.
And then maybe later on, once you play for a while...
And then you're like, okay, now I understand this part, now I can take it a step further.
The problem is play is very expensive.
Yeah, who's got the free time?
That's the problem.
And that's really what it is. I mean, because, playing could take place in so many ways, and our, electronics is pretty cheap to play with and things like that. What really is the expense here is the time. The freedom, the time,
Because then you basically have to put aside everything else so you can immerse yourself in play.
It's almost like a normal life, normal family life doesn't really go with creativity in that sense.
Or you can be young.
Yes.
If you're a teenager.
Young, you have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, you have, it's always complicated because in some ways people have a lot more time, but in other ways they have a lot less. It's like you have plenty of time to watch Netflix in some ways, but you don't have as much time to immerse yourself in a new subject.
Yeah, it's like you have less free active time.
Yeah.
Where you are like doing stuff.
Yeah.
It's almost like because it's very easy to find the time for Netflix and things like that because those are your like my brain is shut off time.
Yeah.
And I'm tired after
and you
doing
give
these
yourself
other things.
that opportunity.
And you give yourself that, and it's easy.
Yeah.
And you can do that anytime, late at night or whatever. Whereas it takes a lot more energy when you like maybe come home from work to go out and do something like playing with circuitry.
Yeah. Or programming.
Yeah.
I think programming is a lot like that, especially if you don't learn in a formal environment.
Yeah.
And yeah, I know it's when I was learning programming, I would completely like psychotically immerse myself in it.
Right.
And nothing else would, reach you.
Yeah.
You're thinking about it all the time.
I love that sense of concentration
Yeah.
when nothing else matters.
Well,
And
I guess
all
you
there
could be in the
is-
shop all night doing the same kind of thing with learning dovetails.
Yeah.
You just do it until you're crazy.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It is that way with, subjects.
It feels like a very young thing, It's like as people get older, fewer and fewer really do that.
It
where
is,
they
it
are
is,
like-
yeah. It's hard to find the free time because
Yes.
you're thinking, well, it's not that great. It's not that important if I actually create this thing with the Arduino.
Uh-huh.
It's going to be cool, but it's not like really worth like putting your mind in a
Right.
weird state for a long time.
Right, and often you just can't. If you have family and there are other things
Yeah.
going on, you just can't put your mind in that state.
The
You
problem
don't have
is
that
like
luxury.
that's with the YouTube world. If you want to stay creative, it's hard to have a family, obviously, because you really have to stay creative and play with new things.
It's like a constant
battle.
That's what I was gonna say. A battle. And that's a good thing, I don't think that's a bad thing in some ways.
Well, I think it's a good example if other people see you struggling like that. It's like if you're a bump on a log and you're
Right.
just watching Netflix, it's like you're boring. But if you're actually struggling with the concept of like learning new things and trying to find the free time to immerse yourself, which is really difficult to like pick an end time, like you cannot say that I'm going to take 1 hour each day and play with this.
Yeah, that is
You
very
just
difficult.
can't do that.
One thing that I find is extremely immersing is the editing. I mean, especially, of course, that's like a job in some ways.
Isn't that editing? Isn't that like immersion in a bad way though?
Yeah, it almost is, because sometimes if I'm tinkering with little things and then like 5 hours went by and it went like this.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, that's a job though.
It's a job, but it's also completely immersing in that sense.
That's in a negative way though. I don't see how that's positive.
Yeah.
And-
you don't
and-
come out of it all refreshed.
Because unless you're exploring a new area of how to edit or some new
Yeah,
technique.
it's almost like, you know what, that's my favorite. Like I was painting the other day and first I was so frustrated with it because it didn't come out right. But then something clicked and then I kind of started to, see these things take shape, and then I got so immersed in it, and it's such a relaxing concentration.
Yeah.
And then you come out of it and you're not tired and you're just like relaxed and calm and happy.
You don't put an end time on that though.
You can't, because it's stressful if you have an end time.
Yeah.
Then you become, stressed out.
And of course, most people have an end time in some way.
Yeah.
If they're trying to, get something. Especially, I'm thinking of the YouTube people because they're trying to learn new things.
Yeah.
Whereas, I guess many people in other jobs are too. But it's like if you're a normal job, you're trying to solve problems more than be creative.
Right.
Be creative kind of in this world means like try different things you haven't done before. So you're starting from scratch on a lot of different I mean, a lot of people are trying welding now. A lot of people are, messing with electronics for the first time. That means it's going to take a lot of your brain and a lot of your free time.
Right.
And so you're going to cut something.
Right.
Yeah. But
Yeah.
you have to do it.
Yeah, it's almost like that's always, it's like I'm realizing that more and more, that there are only so many things you can focus on at the same time. It's like you may think that you can focus on a lot of different things.
Well, that's why we kind of partner up pretty well with that.
We do.
Because, I can help out in many ways.
Yeah.
And,
And not to mention, we have the idea factory going on here all the time, where
Yeah.
all we do is talk about new project and new concepts
Exactly.
and new ideas.
yeah. We have a lot of projects
it's very
going on
useful
at the
to
same
be able to
time.
talk with somebody about that. Yeah, we got lots of projects in the works.
I've noticed that a lot of people don't talk about their future projects too much.
I wonder why. I wonder if most of them people don't have.
It seems to me that part of the creativity concept is that you're actually sharing a lot.
Yeah, I think
Because
so.
you can't be
Because if you
afraid
don't
that other
share
people
it,
will do
then,
things.
First of all, nobody can really judge it and really judge whether it's creative or not. And then
Well,
you're kind of
yeah.
stuck in that sense.
Yeah, it's interesting to know whether if you make something that someone else is going to make it too, or if they're going to modify it and improve it.
Yeah.
And that's all that really matters, is that you get your idea out there,
Yeah.
whatever the project was, and that other people say, oh, that's pretty cool, I want to try that. That basically means it was creative.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
You know, if you did a new technique or if it's a new structure or chair or
Right.
whatever. Well,
Exactly. And
it's
that
like,
is true for many things. I'm just thinking about writing too. If somebody reads somebody else's writing, it's like, I'm so inspired to go and write something of my own, but not like yours exactly, but like. So I don't think it's not necessarily just building.
What was that definition of I can't remember exactly what it was. It was something like, if you steal from one person, it's plagiarism, and if you steal from lots of people, it's creativity. You know?
Yeah, that's a good one.
Mostly because you're not going to come up with something in a vacuum.
No.
You're not going to be on a deserted island and come up with the next
which
battleship.
is why the most stressful situations, Los Alamos.
Yeah, there was a lot of sharing there, though.
Yeah, there was a lot of sharing there.
Yeah.
And they were under pressure, and
it's a really fascinating situation because of the pressure.
Yeah.
You know, I read about Heisenberg and his attempt to create the bomb, and it's like, it seems like a totally different environment. As much as the military seems to be on top of Los Alamos and the Leslie Groves and the power structure,
right.
The scientists and the engineers were completely free to share everything and explore everything.
Right.
Whereas the Germans seem to be so insulated. And
when you hear about some of these
other.
stories, Los Alamos, it seems like very idyllic from a creation point of view. First of all, they had picnics and they went out and they were in this pure thinking environment.
I guess the military had vague goals for them too. Like, obviously get the bomb done, but also they didn't have they weren't controlling them too much. Oppenheimer did a great job of kind of managing that, expectations of the military. But it was a relatively free and open situation for them to share.
Yeah.
And there's a lot of people there, of course, too. The Germans didn't have that same freedom.
Right.
They weren't sharing in the same way. Of course, obviously their position was different too. Being the instigators of the war is very different than being the
exactly
the defenders.
Right. It's a different kind of pressure, really.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it is one of the more fascinating kind of large situations where there's a lot of creativity going on.
Right.
So it is a fascinating place.
Right. So much going on. Yeah.
And I guess you basically have, modern companies.
That's what I was thinking.
Similar.
Startups. Yeah. Sometimes when they're like, okay, we have to do this, we have to figure this out, especially if the product isn't completed or something, especially if it's something tech related, where they're working on an app or a program or something. And
and it's I guess the thing is that as they bring more and more people in, those people are support people. It's the original kind of kernel of a concept that is what matters.
Right.
Which I guess the head people, obviously did, before the company formed in many ways. So the hard work was done.
Yeah, or at least the concept, the idea was done.
Yeah,
then you just have the execution left.
Yeah, the software engineers you bring later on are kind of
they're just doing a job.
They're maintenance people. Yeah. They're making it work better.
Right.
The worst thing in the world is to debug your code.
Yeah.
It's really fun to write programs where there's no error correction because you just can be very free.
Yeah.
You can write really, really fast.
Right. Because you have to do no checks. There's no otherwise when you write code, there's so many checks where you have to make sure if this happens and if this happens and if this happens, you have to do all these
when you first, if you were to write code with the concept that you're having a user kind of check it right away, like a normal person, submit information to a database or whatever. Yeah, then that slows you down a lot.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between hand tools and power tools. If you get slowed down, it's hard to kind of go fast and forward.
Right. That's really that's true for so many things. It's true for as anything grow larger, changes happen so much slower.
Yeah.
As a company grows and there are more regulations,
there's more error correction.
There's more error corrections. In other words, exactly. As governments grow, bigger. It's like a huge ship that's so difficult to steer, and you can't change the direction.
I guess that's a good point, though, about when you go really fast in the beginning of something, you're not making a lot of checks. If you start out kind of trying to make a box with dovetails, and you try to get them perfect, you are slowing yourself down so much that you may never actually get a box done.
Yeah, it kind of goes back to the whole concept of don't be like so, like don't have an image so stuck in your head of what you want that you just like can't move beyond that.
And then you're not practicing or innovating.
Right. It's almost like the important thing is just, I think perfection is overrated completely. Yeah, I'm not really into perfection. I know you're not into perfection either. Yeah. But it's almost like...
I think it's a bad thing. It's a bad goal.
Because I really think that the most important thing is to move on. Go to the next thing.
I always notice the people who say they basically do want perfection. They're basically... Those are the kind of people who basically are like, I'm not going to get a whole lot done in life, but what I do get done is going to be pretty good. Really good. Yeah. You know what? You can keep your like not get much done. It's hard to innovate when you don't do a lot.
Yeah. I agree. It's like you have to just move on to the next and the next and the next. And if you get so like fixated on one little thing,
it's being sloppy is kind of the heart of creativity in many ways.
It is, because exactly. It's the master, what do you call it?
Jack of all trades and a master of none.
Exactly.
I don't know. Well, I think I would disagree with the way you said that. You get, practice makes you really good. But the problem is if you don't go fast in the beginning and innovate just in your own mind, you're not going to get to the point where you want to do it again and again, because you need to create this kind of positive feedback loop of success.
Yeah, well, I agree with
Small successes are fine.
I agree with that. It's almost like, I think, for me anyway, that goes back to a feeling.
Well, hold on. Let's go back to the concept of when you do the Arduino Christmas tree.
Oh, yes.
Like how many transistors did you burn out?
Yeah, a lot.
Exactly. Yeah. You don't get it perfect at first.
You don't show that in the video. No. You don't show the process to getting to that point.
I don't think that's necessary. Right. You just confuse people when you show... Like it's distracting from the end goal.
I think so too. I think it depends on what kind of video you're putting out. If you're like, this is what I did, then that's that kind of video. If it's like, this is my journey in learning, that's a different kind of video.
That's a different kind of video on that. I don't really think that's that important to see all the mistakes. I think the fact that like if you make a lot of mistakes, you can also look at that as, well, I got pretty far to make more mistakes.
Exactly.
You can look at it this way. If you're the creator of something, you might as well move fast and absorb as much as possible about the next thing you're trying to do.
Right.
And then you can let like some future employee fix it.
And that's exactly what I was just gonna say. Like ideally, I guess, is where you have an idea and you start something and you kind of design it and you kind of get into it and then you have other people finish it because it's
exactly. Well, let's say that you work at like a company, a Google or whatever. And your job is seemingly not very creative. Say you're an error checker, or you're a code fixer, or something like that. Well, that means that you need to make your job like you need to automate things more, right? You want to make it easier.
So you need to be creative.
So you're creative in
the Arduino or whatever.
Or maybe not an Arduino.
whatever you can in your situation.
Exactly.
So you need to be creative in how to
so
make it more efficient. So you don't have to personally do that.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So that's creative.
Right.
When you get to fix kind of, so any position can be creative in that sense. You don't have to just be like, well, my job is to dig ditches all day and I don't do anything else, because maybe you should kind of figure out a way to make that done faster.
Right.
Yeah, something like that.
Where it's more automated.
Yeah, and automation is a great way to. Those are always the first problems to solve. Automation, do this.
Hence the Industrial Revolution.
Well, feed the dog, or make breakfast quicker, or whatever.
Yeah.
Those automation tasks.
It's almost like that kind of goes back to routine. Because I think that routine is awesome in a sense that it removes things from your brain. That you don't have to think about things when they are in a routine. Yeah.
I agree with you. So that's you mean like to help creativity.
It's actually very good to have routines in that sense.
Okay, so let me give you an example. You mean like if you go to the same place for food each day, you just order the same thing.
Yes.
Because if you keep looking at that menu, you're gonna like
and all your brain power goes to thinking about the food.
I totally agree with that.
Yeah.
Yeah. Unless you're a food critic,
if that's your job,
I don't care about the menu.
On that. And it's kind of like, I can think that's kind of like, I love looking at the menu and that's fun, but it's like that's entertainment. That's like bad for
exactly.
your brain.
It is. It's entertainment.
Yeah.
Food is often very. So we've been to the same sushi place for like, I don't know, years.
Yeah.
I think I've ordered the same thing every single time, which we've been there probably 100 times.
Yeah.
And I've never ordered anything different.
Yeah.
because it's kind of, that's the reason you go there. And you don't want, if they didn't have that on the menu,
I know.
I would probably walk out.
It was so frustrating because they increased their menu, and I was like, I don't want to look at it.
Yeah.
But it looks so interesting, but I really shouldn't.
You're L11 and I'm L12A.
Yeah.
And that's it. I will never order anything different. It's too much. It shifts your brain in a way that it takes the focus away from what you went there to talk about.
Yeah. Actually, that's the kind of another thing that is like, a lot of people, sometimes people love to go to different restaurants, and again, I think that's really fun.
If that's the goal.
But if you actually go out for the sake of conversation, which I love, where it's like, it's an opportunity to think and talk.
Especially if it's about business or something.
Especially that. But also maybe if you even haven't seen somebody in a long time and you really just want to connect with them and talk, then if you are all like, ooh, let's check out this new place and look,
it's a distraction.
It's a distraction. You don't want to focus on that. It's like bad for your creative mind to have to deal with too many new things when you don't want to deal with them.
So it's kind of funny, but routine can increase creativity.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so too.
Yeah.
I think we said this once before too, well, maybe not on the podcast, but the exercise or working out can definitely kind of spark new thoughts.
Yeah.
There's a lot of things like that, and I think it has a lot to do with the same thing about the interleaving.
Yes, and you kind of mix things up.
It's that mixing up concept. Yeah. Of course, if you get into a routine with everything,
that's what I was kind of getting
difficult.
at. That some things it can be bad to be in a routine when you're so stuck in a rut.
Yeah.
Where that you just don't have any freedom of thought.
I guess it goes back to that free time. You need to play quite a bit. If you want to stay extremely creative.
Right.
Yeah, but you're never settled that way.
No, you're not.
You're not going to be as, normal. You're not going to be quite as normal if you have no routine.
How creative do you want to be? What level of creativity you want to be at? Because if you want to be like really, really creative, then a normal life is probably not a good idea.
So let's say that if someone wants to be at like the height of creativity, what do you think they should do?
They should be alone or be with just other people who are into this exact same thing.
Okay, so yeah, I agree with you that people around you kind of reinforce the same thought process.
Right, because then you have the kind of
the
friendly competition in a sense.
Okay, competition.
Ideas breed more ideas, and it's a creative environment.
Yeah. So it's a competitive creative environment.
Competitive creative environment, right? Where you kind of want to outdo the other person, but
and the best way to outdo like somebody in your environment in a way is to beat them by learning something they will probably learn. It shifts your mind, plus you get some new information.
Especially, it's kind of funny because you can do that by studying other things.
Yeah.
And it might not be anything that's revolutionary or new.
Exactly.
It's just that other person haven't heard of those things.
Exactly. It's like you relax in a way by studying paleontology, which maybe has nothing to do with
military
woodworking.
Strategy.
Exactly.
Or something like that.
Yeah.
And you're like, Alexander did this technique, and this person doesn't know, but I'm going to utilize that same concept.
Yeah. I guess, It's seeing how people like adopted creative techniques in the past. Yeah. That's like the best history.
Why fight through things in that sense?
Yeah.
Build on other people. Build on other experiences.
I think that's right. The better you do build on other people and other things, you will be more effective. You're going to take a shortcut.
Right. It's a good thing to take shortcuts.
If you start and try to reinvent the wheel on every single subject, you're going to have a much more difficult time.
Right.
It's more frustrating.
Right. It's like good and bad, because in some ways I think sometimes it can be good to start from scratch because it kind of forces you to work through something, completely understand something.
It gives you a lot of control, but it also takes a lot of time.
Yeah. Right.
And it also leaves you alone
so that
in a
maybe
sense.
You can't, like if it's a program, for example, if you're starting out with programming and you're building a program from scratch, as opposed to building on top of somebody else's program, then that means that your program won't be able to integrate as well with theirs.
That's true.
It's more isolated in that sense.
I think it goes back to how fast you were able to move, though. And I think it depends what you're valuing there.
Right.
And if you can move really, really fast, then it's you're gonna sacrifice the compatibility with someone else or other people in general.
But okay, so you're basically relying on that you will be successful on your own,
or that you're gonna have achieved something that's pretty interesting or unique that is unique enough
Yeah.
that somebody else will figure out how to like, meld the two systems together.
But that's not your job then.
Exactly. Yeah, you're basically saying it's not your job.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I prefer to think that way personally.
Yeah.
And I think that's easy. And not everybody's going to be able to do that.
Yeah.
Especially if you are an employee.
It's very much based on personality types there too, in a sense.
Opportunity too.
Yes, and opportunity.
Yeah, if you're doing this and you're an employee, you're going to be under different restrictions.
Yeah.
Yeah, just in the same way you can't get your martini lunch, which is sad that you can't. But it is always a difficult situation when you're not in control enough.
Mm-hmm.
And so your creativity can be limited by the fact that you don't have the control to become creative. Like to a level
it's like
you
you're really
want.
stuck in that sense because you want to move beyond that, but then you can't because of the situation you're in.
Yeah.
And it's like this bad loop that you can't get out of.
It is a difficult situation, and especially if you're trying to use when you go home and your free time there to explore new things, to become more creative or whatever to help you out in the job or start a new thing on your own.
Yeah.
That I prefer the concept of you having your own business, of course,
right.
But if you don't have that, then you have to work within that a little more limited structure.
Yeah.
But there's still time to play, and learning new things is pretty cheap and easy.
Right.
It's just time consuming.
It's almost like more than anything, it requires discipline of your own mind. Like discipline to actually go and study and read those things, as opposed to doing something easier.
I think though it's often really fun to learn this stuff.
Yeah.
If you're gonna start off.
And the thing is, if you learn something and then you utilize that in some way, then you
quickly.
have then you're like, okay, let me do more of that. Let me kind of, it's so motivating when you're actually successful at something.
It's addicting.
It's very
you constantly
addictive.
Want to create more.
So it's almost like, it goes back to that, because if you want to be creative, then the first thing to do is to just do things.
Yeah.
Because
and don't worry about the outcome.
Exactly. Don't worry about the outcome. Don't worry if it's not. Don't worry if it's not going to be that great. Don't worry about if you can't do it. Anything like that. Just get in there and do it.
Well, it's almost like if you're gonna try to build like a car or something.
You're aiming high right away.
No, you don't want to go for airbags.
Okay, that's a good point.
You just want to get that thing moving straight.
The bones.
Yeah, exactly.
Right off the bat.
Just go for at least 2 tires.
Exactly. If you want to build a table, don't get all fixated on the inlays that you
exactly.
later on
That's a
will
good point.
do.
Yeah.
Think about that you need 4 legs,
yeah.
maybe 3, but probably 4,
yeah.
and a tabletop.
Of course, if you come from the point of view that, just building a few tables as practice is fine, you're probably going to do better than the person who's like, I got 1 piece of wood to work with, and that's the whole thing.
In that sense, having too precious materials can be a really bad thing.
That's the jointer. That's why the jointer is such a great tool, because you can use
just having
trashy
like a table
wood.
saw in general. Or, equipment to mill your own wood.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have to feel like, oh my god, this is a $50 piece of wood, and I can't imagine messing this up.
That's why the lathe is a great piece, because you can just cut pieces off a tree that's nearby.
Yeah, the lathe is awesome.
Yeah, and you can use wet wood.
You don't need very big pieces to create a lot of things.
Yeah, you can just use wet wood. You can make anything with it.
Yeah, I remember first getting the lathe, and I'm walking around with Darwin, and I'm constantly I'm on alert for wood anywhere, and so excited if I found something.
And then you can turn it and not have to worry about making a mistake with it. You just do it.
Because it's basically free.
Yeah.
So anyway, don't be too, ideally when you start, don't use good materials.
Yeah.
Whenever possible, especially when you practice or whatever, use framing lumber, use cheap stuff. Use plywood.
It's kind of interesting. How much do garage woodworkers and the people who watch a lot of YouTube videos, how interested are they in creativity anyway? Because it's like if you just want to have a cool space to relax and build stuff, I don't know how creative a lot of people want to be anyway.
In that sense, it's more their experience. It's
how creative do you want to be?
Oh.
You want to be psycho
I
creative?
want to be super creative. I want to be
So you're abnormal.
Well, I probably. I want my videos to be super creative. I want my projects to be creative. I want everything I do to be creative. To a fault.
Is Darwin creative?
Well, I always say that he's a maker because he has his own blanket and he carries it around and he makes it into a pillow and he puts his head on it. So that it makes him a maker.
Yeah, he's pretty good at doing that.
Yeah, it's pretty much the only thing that... Darbin is the dog, for those who don't know that.
Yeah. Hence the name Darbin Orvar.
Hence the name Darbin Orvar.
So what projects haven't gone so well?
Oh, you know what? One thing comes to mind. Over Christmas, we were talking about how awesome it would be to make a nutcracker, and how that would be a really cool project. But turns out it's not quite as. There was a lot of trial and error there.
If I remember correctly, it crushed nuts.
But
it crushed everything.
It crushed everything. It was a major design flaw.
It was like too easy to crush everything.
Yeah, everything got crushed, not just the shell.
I think that's because...
And it was huge too, because,
I think that's because we were trying to make sure it could crush Brazil nuts.
Yeah.
And Brazil nuts are really,
but then
really
we're
hard.
using wood too, and not metal, and wood is weak, and, if you want to be able to use a lot of, crush something big, you need more leverage.
That's right. I think we did it first with dowels or something, and it broke the dowels. We oak dowels, and so then we used metal.
Yeah, it was a mess.
The whole project didn't work out too well.
Nothing worked out.
We built the thing, but it was like, it was not very sophisticated.
It was not good.
It was kind of, So there's that kind of failure. So I guess if you're rushing on a project, and I often, especially if you're doing projects like that, where you're not going, like, you don't really know what you want to accomplish,
right,
but you just want to crush the nuts, and you'll pretty much crush anything that you can put in that space.
And that's what I was thinking about. I wanted to make a crushing machine that just crushed anything.
Right.
I wanted to do tests of, like, crushing all different kinds of materials and woods and stuff. But then you needed so much force in order to crush things.
And that's what you were thinking about, the ratcheting mechanism compared to the screw or something. Yeah.
And that didn't really work out. It was like there was not enough incentive to really work on it. Sometimes things are just kind of cool, but, like, when they don't really work out, it's like...
Cool is always an interesting concept. Things that seem cool may not be that interesting.
Yeah.
It's always hard to tell.
Initially, it may seem really cool, yeah.
Yeah. Like the Arduino Christmas tree.
I know, that was another thing that seemed really cool, like, initially.
Yeah.
But then, and it was kind of cool, but it was kind of pointless at the same time.
Well, it was kind of fun to mess with, I guess.
It was a fun thing, and it was fun to, get the lights to team up with the bum, 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 bum. So that was fun.
I guess, though, it was fun
just to tinker with it.
When you're messing with a project, though, it's often interesting how, when you were doing the box joint jig, it's like, I know that there was a lot of other ideas going on there.
Yeah, right.
But it ended up being the very first thing you did was what you ended up with.
Sometimes it's kind of funny because sometimes, it's like that where, you have these ideas and you're like, okay, I want to make this super cool and I want this, this more complicated mechanism. Okay, here's just the first try.
And the first thing comes out really fast without any error checking.
Right, exactly. And it's like, okay, that's fine. And then, like, but it would be really cool to make it, like, super awesome or something. But then you always come back to that first idea because it was simplest.
Remember when we talked about trying to get the Arduino to actually do the whole process?
Yes! It was another one of those things that seem really cool, but is it really worth it?
It's always kind of funny because you probably would get a lot of views.
Okay, so let's explain it.
It's basically the idea that the Arduino, you'd set it up with a couple different motors to, do the counts. And then you would basically have another motor that would, push it forward through the saw blade and then pull it back.
It just seems like they're very accident prone. Well,
even if you could do it, it would be like, if it didn't get a lot of views, it would be like...
It would be a major time investment.
Yeah, it would be exactly.
It was like, when is it worth it? Do something that... another thing that we've been talking about that would be kind of cool would be to build a Rube Goldberg machine. Yeah. But it's also one of those things that, hey, that seems kind of fun and it'd be kind of cool.
It's like, it's stupid at the same time.
It's so stupid at the same time because there's no real reason to do it other than that it would be kind of cool.
It's always an issue with that.
It would be a distraction in that sense.
Yeah, because we were talking about, internet radio would be pretty cool to do with the Raspberry Pi and which of course we don't need one.
Right, it's like there's no.
But it'd be kind of fun to try it.
Yeah.
And then of course that weather station would be pretty cool.
Yeah.
And then we were talking about there was an article on I don't remember where. It was about using LEDs to transmit information. Like
Morse code kind of blinking?
Yeah, like direct line of sight, LED transfer, or light transfer.
Yeah, that's another thing.
Like from one side of the shop to the other, we could have
communicate.
Yeah, we could basically have like, because the point is that LEDs can blink very, very quickly.
Yeah.
And they then a
they
receiver.
they don't need much time to heat up and
Exactly.
cool down.
Yeah. And then on the other side of the room, you could have a receiver that would be able to read very, very fast blinking of the LEDs and, like, translate that to like a text or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So you could build on one side of the room, you have a very, very fast blinking light, and on the other side of the room, you have a receiver to receive that in line of sight, and then to translate it.
Yeah.
And that would be really cool. And it might be fun to do that. That's one of these things that if you sat there all night and just fooled around with it, you could probably, rig it up and get it together.
Right.
But it would be full of errors, and it wouldn't really be a project.
Exactly. That's the thing. If you do a video where it's like, how to, this is how you do it, you want that to work. You want that to be like almost foolproof.
Although it would be interesting to do a channel of like hypotheses and challenges and that were never actually working, but all sorts of like possibilities.
That makes me think, is that like an idea that sounds cool but really isn't, if you think about the amount of work involved and the kind of like, how far would you go with an idea before you like put it in that category and before you realize that this was just like not worth it?
Well, it's always hard to tell where to stop.
Yeah.
And it's always hard to tell where it's not going to end up in a project.
Right. And sooner or later you're like, okay, I have so much time invested in this, so I have to go on with it because...
demonstrating like proof of concept or something is obviously not really a workable tool, but a project, but it may actually show that it can work.
Yeah.
That's pretty cool. We talked about this once before of like, what if you took like the Khan Academy has all sorts of, chemistry and math problems and things. Mm-hmm. What if you actually built those?
Right.
Demonstrating.
Applied versions.
Yeah, exactly. Applied versions.
Problems.
Of like, if you want to show like gravity, let's say, and you used like an Arduino to record when it passed a ball or whatever, passed through different points in space or falling or whatever. Or if it was going down and recording friction differences.
Right.
That would be pretty cool. But the problem is who's interested in that?
That's just what I was thinking. Like, who is the audience for that? Because it's like, that's not something that's going to go viral. Somebody, oh my god, this is so cool. It displays gravity so well.
Yeah, exactly. That is the problem, is that...
unless you have a benefactor or a situation, a school or a system that's already looking for that and want to distribute that out. It's not like who is it for? Well,
it goes back to the concept that whatever works first, you do.
You do, right? You get stuck in whatever works in a way, whether that's good or bad.
So everybody thinks they're in like control over things, but really they're absolutely
Google's
not.
algorithm might just have slightly favored that one more.
Oh yeah.
And there's no reason why.
Well, obviously, if you have a channel that's established as a building channel, and then you begin to move it over to something else,
and then your audience is already all tuned in on your building, and they get all annoyed if you start putting up,
Well, it's not about them just getting annoyed. It's about you're not set up for that either.
Yeah.
And so that's why you start. That's why it's better when someone who's quite young does it, that has no other experiences, and they just go and play in that direction.
Yeah.
Because you got to look at your channel as play.
Yeah, right.
The whole thing.
Exactly. It is like one big play box.
Yeah.
Sandbox.
Yeah, that's the concept. Yeah.
Right.
Where it's one big development kit that never gets perfected.
Right. And exactly. And things need to be working only up to a point, in a sense, because it's not like you're ready to sell the product,
Yeah, whether it's a desk or whatever nonsense.
And you have to, of course, if you're transparent with what you're doing and you're like, hey, this part doesn't work so well, it's a work in progress, but overall, it's cool.
I agree with you theoretically. That sounds like a really cool thing. But the problem is that if you tell people something isn't cool about this project,
that's negative right there.
Yeah, you can't be negative like that.
Yeah,
you've got to basically look at it like, okay, this is a perfected project.
Yeah.
And then people will like it.
Right.
Because they're not really looking to say, like, make a half-decent table.
I agree.
They want to make a nice table.
They want a nice table, right.
So you've got to call that kind of channel where it's basically
experiences, in a sense. It's
this is a hack channel. Right. It's like nothing's going together right.
Right.
It doesn't matter because it's about proof of concept. Yeah. It's not about,
That could be a cool channel.
I hope someone, people kind of have
people
that, I
kind
suppose.
of do that, but...
Another project we've always talked about doing that we haven't done yet, and that we've been talking about for like a year.
Which one is this now? I'm curious now which one you're
the trebuchet.
Oh, okay, the big one.
Yeah. Like a large trebuchet that shoots the tennis ball.
Yeah, I still think that would just be so cool. So you do a really, a big one. You take it to the park, and you throw the ball and Darwin runs, but then you have the drone.
Yeah, if you have a drone. With a
GoPro.
GoPro.
With a GoPro. It's filming it, and you get this really awesome perspective. And, you might even, I think that'd be awesome.
That's
but
the
it's
thing.
like,
it's like, we actually bought some parts for it last year.
Yep. Well, worked on the catapult, the smaller catapult.
Well, that was
model.
not a trebuchet,
But I'm saying that was kind of like a precursor.
No, we talked about a trebuchet way before.
No, I know, but that was like
catapult.
really got into it, and we were like, okay, we're going to do it. But then, of course, it was also winter and rainy and not so good. But then it's like...
Yeah, but if you didn't have the drone, then it was not as interesting.
I know. It was all about the drone in that sense.
It was all about, seeing Darwin run after the ball. If the ball got thrown really far,
really far.
So it's just like, it's one of those ideas that sounds really cool.
But then practically...
And actually is easy to build.
Yeah.
It's just that without the drone, it's not really that fun.
Yeah,
and the video is like what you're, the end goal.
And you want the fun. It's all about the fun in that sense.
It's kind of all these different camera angles at the same time.
Yeah.
And it's not really a cool project at all. It's a cool video.
It's a medieval, simplistic, clever.
Yeah.
It's not complicated.
There's a lot of those examples that you have that you'd never end up working on.
Right.
And the ones that you practically end up working on they're both doable, but they don't require as much time.
Right. Yeah. There's always this magic formula if a project gets done where it fits a certain price range, a certain time commitment, and there's actually a point to doing it.
Yeah,
there's actually a market for it in some way, or there's the need for it.
Like, the Raspberry Pi, you just got the HDMI controller.
Yes.
And
I know. I'm really looking forward to working more on that.
It's kind of weird though, because we that was like an old laptop you ripped the screen out of.
Yeah.
And it's kind of cool.
Yeah.
The idea of it.
I think it is really cool, and I think it would be really cool to make.
It's kind of insane though, because it's like, when you actually boil it down, it's a weak computer.
Exactly, it's not something you actually. But then, okay, yeah.
But again, it's that play.
In that sense, that it's not something you actually need, but just the idea that you can create this computer so cheap.
Yeah.
I mean, you can make it look really awesome. You can build a cool little box for it.
That's right, because you wanted to put it on the side of the Tinker Table or something like that.
I wanted to have it right there with this kind of screen embedded in it, and kind of have a swivel arm or something. And it's like a little station for that area.
Yeah.
And it'd be so much fun to do. And I realized that it fundamentally is a weak computer.
Yeah.
But it would still be so much fun, and it would be so cool. And it's so cheap, which makes it so cool.
I think the benefit of that is not probably the direct project, but it's that you played with it. Yeah. You maybe take it away from the monitor eventually.
Yeah.
And you do something else.
You probably won't keep on there forever.
Like we talked about the Arduino or the Raspberry Pi. It's also kind of cool. It's like if you wanted to have like self-watering systems.
Mm-hmm. Or if you want to scare the deer away in the garden.
Yeah.
If you do something with that.
You have it, shoot mace.
Yeah, exactly.
Something like that.
You make your own pepper spray with a chili pepper.
It's a perfect example of you rush to get it done and it looks really cool, but then it works if you go near it.
Yeah, right.
Because there's not error correction.
Right. It's like prime for a good comedy where somebody perfects a system like that. And then
but they don't perfect the checks.
Himself. You're right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Proof of concept works, but you don't have all the stupid checks which nobody wants to work on.
It's kind of every time we think about this kind of thing, it's that automation concept.
Yeah.
It's too much automation. It kind of gets boring.
Yeah.
You can automate, like, dealing with the deer. You can automate your lights. You can automate,
Yeah.
There's so many automation things. You can really get bogged down in automation.
Yeah.
It's hard to tell how creative automation is because it doesn't really do anything. It does what you already do faster.
Right.
It's always annoying.
It is kind of because it frees up your mind or your time sometimes.
If you deal with it much anyway.
Right. Which most automations people don't really, unless it's in industry or where it's actually in a factory or something and something becomes automated, but.
Yeah, it's like if you made something to automate, like you made an Arduino machine to automate your dovetails. It's like,
what's the point with that?
Well, it would be a cool video, and that's about it.
I mean, okay, so if the point is the video, not that's always the thing too. What is the point? Is the point the video? Is the point the project?
Well, like I said, it is a fun factory. That's how you have to look at the whole thing.
Yeah, it's a fun factory. It's an idea factory.
Yeah, a lot of times people wonder, like, do the projects get used? Well, yeah, I guess they basically do.
It's kind of like building that little tiny house. way back, and we actually burned that.
It went up in flames really well.
It went, oh my god, it just went up so
It was a good, we took it for the video.
When we used it.
It was a good example of how you should definitely don't want your house to go on fire.
Yeah, definitely not. But I was thinking about how I was not sad to let it go, because I was thinking that the end of that, the goal of that was really the video. And I still have the video.
Well, it's like Thor's hammer. I wonder what's going to happen to that.
God. There's no place for Thor's hammer. It's so big, and I'm not gonna dress up as Thor anytime soon. It's like I did that for the video, and again.
So what's this Halloween gonna bring?
I don't know. It'd be cool to do something, and I like to play. And to dress up and.
Halloween. It's coming pretty soon.
I know it's coming too soon. Everything is coming too soon. I was thinking maybe a sword. Like not a metal sword, like a wooden sword that looks like metal, maybe. But that's kind of like, I don't know, I want something.
So something like a prop.
Definitely a prop of some kind, because that's kind of just fun, thinking like bow and arrow, but I don't know. You want that to actually work if you were gonna do that, so you don't want like a fake bow and arrow. You just walk around like a prop. You want to be able to actually be able to shoot it.
Yeah.
So I don't know. It'd be cool to do something though.
Maybe it's not a good idea to even actually, if you don't have an idea, maybe you shouldn't bother with it. Because if you actually try to force the idea,
right,
you're just gonna waste your time.
Yeah. It's like not pushing too hard.
Like, I don't remember how Thor's hammer came about, but it was kind of a cool project.
It was cool. Yeah, that was really fun actually.
Well, it's fun to smash the pumpkin too.
Yeah, that was the best part. Breaking things is always fun.
Yeah. Didn't somebody last year make a guillotine?
Oh, Andrea.
Yeah.
He did it was like a prop too. He had it.
That was a very elaborate video, if I remember correctly. Was it Halloween?
I don't know if actually I think it was Halloween. Andrea Arsensek, I think his name is Arsensek. And he's down in Mexico.
Yeah.
And he did a very elaborate, full-size guillotine.
He's done a few big things.
A lot, yeah.
He did a telephone booth.
He does some pretty elaborate builds. That's pretty cool.
You always got to wonder the value of those really large builds, like what Steve Ramsey did at TARDIS.
Oh yeah. Although I think that's one of his most popular videos. Not most popular, but I think it's up there.
Yeah, I guess it's one of his largest projects,
too. Right. But at the same time, what are you going to do with something like that once you build it? It's not exactly...
I guess the other thing...
you just do it for the sake of the video.
Yeah, when you think about props, too, it's kind of the opposite of an idea factory, I know that not everybody's looking at it as an idea factory. You mean because there's such an end goal in mind? Because it's not your design. Yeah. And it doesn't do anything really cool. It just looks cool.
Unless you are trying to find a way to create that replica or whatever in an interesting way using different materials.
Well, I mean, it's like Thor's hammer too.
Yeah.
It's kind of like it's not that useful.
Yeah, yeah. After the fact,
it's like, just kind of it's a prop. Yeah. At least this is a prop that you can kind of use to smash pumpkins or something. Yeah, it's always a tricky thing about how much, how each project really, is it that creative? And when you're thinking about getting more creative, and everybody else is kind of around you too, trying to do their creative stuff.
Right.
It's always difficult to see how much you push that. Yeah. You really get, but it's almost like you really like every subject. You want to go into everything. Mm-hmm. And it's always hard to tell where you're going to end up with your projects.
Yeah. And I guess when people are talking about like creativity in general, they just want to be creative in a general sense often, where they want a clear mind, they want to, do better in certain aspects, but they might not want to create the an awesome project necessarily.
I was thinking the other day, there's so many cool tools around here. It's like, when you think about how underutilized the air compressor is, you've got this big tank of potential energy. Yeah. And it's amazing like how you could easily use it as a driver of something.
A lot of things. Right, it could power things.
Yeah, it could power a little go-kart.
Like a little car. Yeah, exactly. That would be cool.
it's I think there was a car once that somebody was building that actually ran on compressed air.
Oh yeah.
I think it was
like a little cartridge, like a little
there was these were huge.
Oh.
It was in a car. I think it was French or something.
Oh.
And it was actually a design where it ran on compressed air.
Uh-huh.
But it just strikes me how we never think about it. We never use the compressed air to do anything.
And it's like it's
shoot staples.
It's sitting there, and
Yeah.
it's like if that's what you had on your deserted island,
You'd be
you would
using
come
it.
up with so many things to do with it.
Okay, I mean, I guess there's a lot of areas you can go with creativity. We've covered like some concepts around
I
it.
think we could do another podcast at some point because there's like
This
there's so many
is
things to
like
talk
one
about.
aspect of creativity.
Yeah.
I guess some people
Concrete
want practical
tips.
things.
That's what I was
like
thinking, more concrete tips maybe.
like
This is-
sleep 8 hours a night or sleep 3 hours a night or whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, like eat spinach or something. Those I don't know if we should go into those kind of concepts anyway because everybody's gonna be different.
Right, and everybody's personality is different and what fits you in a sense too. So.
I know that basically what we're trying to do is one thing and what other people are trying to do is different.
But I think the basic techniques, like interleaving.
I think that's the best one to take away, really.
Right, I think like, just learn a lot, study a lot.
Exactly.
Do a lot of different subjects.
Study a lot of different things you may not have even tried
right, routine,
to
don't
study.
get too fixated on experiences, kind of settle your mind.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Learn how to walk
don't
away.
be afraid of doing things. Just get out there and do things.
Don't be afraid of doing them half-assed either.
Yeah, exactly.
You can move a lot faster that way.
Yeah, right.
If you try to complete everything very perfectly, you're going to be stuck.
You can always go back at some point and perfect something later on,
Or hire somebody else to perfect
hire
it.
someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Here's the train. Okay, so I guess that's about it. Thank you so much for listening.
That's the end of podcast 4.
End of podcast 4. If you are listening to this, please go to iTunes and rate and comment. That would be awesome. Help us reach more ears.
You can find us, or you can find Linn at Darbin Orvar on YouTube.
On YouTube.
Or DarbinOrvar.com.
Exactly, DarbinOrvar.com. Basically, Darbin Orvar on every single system.
Luckily, it is the same thing on Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
So
no one takes that name. That's what's so
exactly.
great.
It's a made-up name, so it's a great name from that point of view.
Name.
So thank you so much for listening, and we'll talk to you guys soon.
Okay. Bye.
Bye.